Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting interview with the cast and crew from Ghostbusters Afterlife. And I have to tell you that I am super excited to introduce to you Mr. Bob Gunton. Bob, thank you so much for making some time for us today. We're excited to have you. And we'll just kind of, if you have not seen the Ghostbusters Afterlife film yet, please do not listen any further. You need to make sure you check that out. But it's interesting, and this is not something that we planned, but we are meeting with you today on the anniversary of Harold Ramis' death. And the timing, the way it lined up is very interesting. And and your role in the film was a huge part in paying homage to him. And all of that. So we'll get into that. But I'm just curious right out the gate. So you were at Ghostbusters Fan Fest. Tom and I were at Ghostbusters Fan Fest on the Sony lot back in June of 2019, I think.
Oh, I was there.
Did you have any idea at that point that you would be working on this film?
No. I didn't have any notion, even after I was asked to do the thing that your hat says, a movie called Rust City. And there was no telling me what my assignment was going to be. It's something about playing a role as somebody else. It was very vague. And it wasn't until I arrived in Alberta that I really found out what this assignment was. Initially I viewed it as an assignment because I thought, they're going to stick those things to me and do a motion thing, and which I hate in movies that I see, especially if it's someone that has either left this world or is not available, or is available but doesn't want to do it, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But Jason took me aside and explained very, very carefully that this was going to be, first of all, it's Ghostbusters. And I know that because I said hello to Bill Murray. I just worked with his brother in a pilot, and we've worked together before in a movie. So I knew it was Ghostbusters. And actually, when I met him, he was wearing, the Ghostbuster drag, and was his usual wry self. But anyway, Jason said this is going to be a very, very important moment in the movie, because what is happening, and he didn't know to the extent that I was aware of Ghostbuster history, but when he said we want to bring back Egon so that he can, first of all, kind of hand the baton off to a new generation of Ghostbusters. And just as importantly, especially encouraging his granddaughter, but more important was to heal a rift that had come from his departure and his issues with his daughter, who is now the mom of the new Ghostbuster hero. He said, why we have asked you to do this is because we don't want just this facade or this representation of Egon and of Harold, because they're inseparable. For at least for Ghostbuster folks, we need to have an actor play these scenes with the children, and especially with Carrie Coon, his daughter. And that would require a face that moved, eyes that could focus, and even a body language of what was going on. And so I said, well, I'll just play it and forget about the fact that you're going to make me look different. That doesn't hurt my feelings at all, but I am happy I get to actually act in this and not just be a model for a virtual person. So when I heard that, I thought, well, this is going to be very interesting, and particularly doing it in front of Bill and Dan, being in their presence with the history that I know about, and even some of the private history among them that I've learned about. It was kind of fun to be there and to really put myself where I think Harold Ramis would have been in this situation and how he might play it. And so that really was the actor's task. And I viewed it as quite a challenge, even not being able to see how they were going to age me and morph that aging into Egon Spengler. So, and I was just there a week, but it was for all of the big scenes at the end, where all the ghosts are getting off, and we realize why Egon had bought this farm and how he had rigged things up, and even how he had lured his granddaughter into getting involved in this whole ghost busting regime.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun to do. It was not difficult because there were lots of emotional things going on there, and I just played those as honestly as I could. And of course, I was absolutely gobsmacked when I only had scenes actually written for the end of the movie, the climax of the movie. But early on, they do a little teaser with a car going through country roads and the dirt farm, whatever that's called. And the guy driving it, I mean, I'm not sure everybody understood immediately that was Egon Spengler, but it was also Bob Gunton. And that was my introduction to what the character was going to look like that I was going to play in these scenes. And of course, I had nothing to do with driving the car or anything. That was somebody else virtualized. But anyway, I had great fun doing it, and also, especially in view of the fact that Ivan has passed away, sadly. But for Jason to take his baton in the same way that Egon's granddaughter takes his baton to run with, I thought was a very emotional and appropriate thing. And also it was very brave to bring that level of emotional moment into something that had really, at least to my mind, had been more action and humor and kind of epic when it was in the New York version. And this would be about family, and that's what Jason has said since in interviews, that this is really a story about a family reuniting in a common thing to bust some ghosts, I guess.
I was in one of the early screenings at New York Comic Con, and the first thing coming out of that, because we were not prepared for it, I told Matt, I said, I'm not going to tell you anything about the movie, but you're not prepared for how emotional it is. And, being fans our whole lives, seeing the characters again is emotional, but as soon as your hand, comes in on the wand that McKenna's holding, it's a completely different feeling entirely. And it just, every Ghostbusters fan in that theater and at the premiere, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And you're right, because that's not how those movies have been historically speaking.
No. And I have to say that I read some of the notices, some of the critiques of the film before it came out. And I read that some of these critics had felt that this was kind of a cheap trick to beg for, empathy or something, that it was, they didn't think it was correct to do. And so I had some trepidation about it when I saw it, before I saw it, which I saw with my granddaughter, by the way, only appropriate. And it was around her birthday, so I had presented her too with the Hasbro duo of Egon and his granddaughter, which I think is great. And I inscribed it for Grace, who was our 11-year-old, 12-year-old granddaughter. And it made the movie mean even more to me. I don't think it meant that much to her yet, but when the time comes that I go wherever Harold and everybody else goes when they pass through this world, that this may be something of interest to her and meaningful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting because Tom did see it first, and he's like, Matt, you're not ready. And I said, Tom, the only thing I hope that does not happen, I hope we do not see Ghost Egon. I think that would be the most ridiculous thing in the world. And then I'm sitting in the theater, the light turns, and then the hand, and I see, and then your character's on screen. My mind is blown. I'm crying. And I think it's like you said, I think it's the fact that it was a real actor who is obviously, as you are gifted in your craft. And I think too, what made it sold it too was watching Bill and Ernie and Dan and everyone else just get so emotional as you're on the screen. And the question I was wondering, with Harold's passing was kind of a quasi sudden, very secretive type thing. No one knew that he was sick. I was wondering if you got the sense that maybe you were not only just a stand-in for his character, but were you at all feel like you were a stand-in for Harold, and this was kind of closure for the other cast and crew that you were working with?
Well, as Jason explained, Harold's family has been apprised of this from very early on. I think in order to test whether this was something that they felt comfortable with. And I think had they expressed anything negative, that it might have been done differently, or maybe a different story. But they were very much for this, and they viewed it as a honoring Harold's life and his particularly his role in Ghostbusters. I have to say at the beginning, when we were rehearsing and stuff, of course, it was just me. The only thing they put on was the costume and the hair. They had gray pompadour. So that was as close as in real life I looked like Harold, which wasn't much at all. And all of them were kind of cocking their heads, wondering, is this going to work? And so I wasn't with them when they saw it, but I hope they were reassured that, yeah, this works. And the reaction I remember most during actually doing the scene was Bill Murray kind of throwing out something like, yeah, I thought you'd show up, in kind of this offhand undercutting way, which is so characteristic. And in a way, it made that scene, for me anyway, even more emotional, because they were falling back into this kind of relationship that they had and off screen too. They had their differences off screen. But it was knowing all of that and hearing his reaction to that. I thought it was a terrific choice. And Carrie Coon is such a wonderful actress.
She's great, yeah.
because we had to go from, oh my God, it's my father, little thing with the children, and then turning and facing one another and what is communicated between them. And I hope, and I think I did sing it, I did play that in a way that, well, here I am for time being. I'm very sorry about the things I didn't do and should have done, and in a way deserting the family. And here I am, and I'm evanescing. I'm not going to be here for long. And to watch in her as she goes through the emotions of, like everyone else, shock, and then maybe anger a little. This son of a gun,
Right.
Came back to do what besides help kill the whatever that ghost was, Biggie.
Gozer.
Yeah. And to see her register all of those emotions and to be able to take them in as Egon and process them in the space of, maybe 30 seconds at most, was a real acting treat for me. And I think it was for her too, because it gave us something really, really important to each of us to say, to accomplish. And of course, not being able to speak or not choosing to speak of it. I'm not sure whether I'm clear totally on that. I know technically why it didn't happen, but it's like that was the rule. If you come back, you only get to say a couple of minutes, and no, you can't talk to anybody. So I played by those rules. But the information and the emotion that we exchanged there was such that I understand why Jason wanted an actor's eyeballs and basic bodily language to be available as real.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very gratifying. I mean, just that 30 seconds, I would have, and I did, fly up to Alberta to be a member of Rust City.
It's interesting to talk about the eyes, because that some of the other movies that have done similar things. One of the Star Wars movies brought back Carrie Fisher that comes to mind. Without the eyes, you get this uncanny valley, and it just doesn't look right. And the effects in Afterlife are the best I've ever seen at doing that. And immediately when the movie was over, I look in the credits and I saw your name, and it said Ghost Farmer, and it didn't click to me. I was like, oh, maybe he was a ghost that got cut. And I immediately asked Eric, right? I was like, what did Bob Gunton play in this? And he goes, he was Egon. And I was like, it blew my mind. Because there was a shot that I really, really appreciate. And it's when you are looking at Carrie and there's a close up of you and you give her that look that you said, where it's essentially you saying, I tried, but only with your eyes. But it's very much, it looks very much like Harold to me, that reaction. And I wanted to know, when you watched the movie for the first time, you said you had some trepidations originally, and then you're seeing it with your granddaughter. When you're seeing your body without your face, how much of yourself are you seeing in that performance?
Well, I saw immediately. I mean, I as I said, when I got into this, I had no idea to the extent that how unrecognizable I would be in order to be as recognizable as possible as Harold. She looks up and she knows who it is. And even, probably sooner than anybody. And because they have a connection that is another moment in that whole ending, that it's like, I'm your granddaughter, but I'm going to be your colleague too. This interests me in a way it interested you. And so that information is exchanged. So as I said, even before the camera pans up to my face, just watching the hands, enfolding her and urging her and reassuring her that that's me. That's me. And then I see the face, and mostly I see what I would expect a more elderly, shouldn't say elderly, he would be my age now, and I don't consider myself elderly. So it rang immediately as Egon Spengler. But I could also see, believe it or not, I could see myself in that, because the eyes and the body are very telltale. And I could see myself animating it. Now, I did spend some time after I found out who I was playing. I went on the internet and actually watched a couple of interviews that Harold had done, including one fairly close to his death. And I said, I am not anything like Harold. And first of all, I'm not that bright and talented in the way that he is talented. So there was no question that I could do any kind of a mimicry of him. So I would just have to play the moments as this heaven comes to earth for a moment. And it's not quirky or anything. It's just pure exchanging information by mutely to the family and to the colleagues. So the whole time through, I'd been prepared. Jason had prepared me, said, you're going to have, and you do have some humility about this, that it's going to be very hard for you to look at the screen and say, well, that's me, but nobody's going to know it. Mm-hmm. And of course, a lot of people had the same reaction that you did. Like, how did they do that? And the not knowing who the dirt farmer, not remembering who the dirt farmer is. But I was very, very happy and fulfilled. I thought the scenes were great. And there was just enough of me that I could, if I needed to, explain it, I think it would be available to anybody who watched it that, but that's him.
I'm curious, just this is less about the acting and more behind the scenes type stuff, but Jason had said leading up to this film, don't spoil the ending, and your role was the big surprise. I was curious, so you already talked about how you've had delays due to COVID and all that, but how was the conversation about you can't talk about this, or did you have to sign a million NDAs, or how stressful was it to keep your role under wraps? Because we did not know until we saw it. I mean, it was such a great secret, but it had to have been hard, I would imagine.
It was difficult, I think, more because an extra year was added to the release. And to tell you the truth, I had been wanted to get some intrigue going, at least in my family and friends. I said, I just did a part or had a part in a film that I think is just wonderful. And it's going to be a blockbuster, and I can't tell you anything about it or what my association with it is. And so I got a lot of, whoa, that's heavy. Wait, is this a CIA operation? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't difficult to do because I understand. I wanted that scene to be explosively a shock initially, and then after the shock is how I'm so glad he got to come back, and isn't that wonderful? And that release And for me, it worked absolutely on the nose.
Yeah, it works so well, and I'm so grateful that the movie exists and that story was to be told. One of the things that I've been very curious about, you talked about the living Egon scenes, and that you did those as well, because we were kind of unclear if you had, and there's some photos that had been out for a minute, but then Sony had asked them to be taken down. We believe did you wear prosthetics for those scenes?
No, that was part of the digital restructuring. Yeah, the only thing I wore was just the pompadour, and not even the glasses, because they wanted to make sure the glasses were exactly in relation to how Harold wore them, what they look like, etc. So I put a couple of dots on my face, but that was basically all there was. So I must congratulate the cast for being able to look at me and react as if not just Egon, but Harold had come back for a moment. And I was surprised, and I thought, is this going to work? Is anybody, is this going to be like doing a sword fight with a virtual dragon or something? Everybody goes, oh yeah. But no, I was basically just the overall thing, and his pompadour, and the pompadour was gray, and they made it look a little like yours here, Tom.
I'm slowly becoming the dirt farmer in 2022, as it turns out.
I mean, we've talked a lot about Ghostbusters, but I think it would be amiss to talk just a little bit about some of your other works. Unless, Tom, you have any other Ghostbusters related questions?
I'm all ready to talk about Demolition Man if you're teeing me up here.
Well, we'll get there. But I mean, when I looked through all the films that I know you in, and I know you had an illustrious stage career too, but you worked with some of the biggest names in Hollywood in history. Bill Murray, Sylvester Stallone, Morgan Freeman, Harrison Ford, George Clooney, and the list goes on and on and on. I was curious, and I know it might be tough, and you may not be able to give one, but as you look back over your career, who are some of your favorite people you've been able to work with?
Well, in the first big movie I did, which came about when Alan Pakula came and saw me in an off-Broadway show and invited me to be a part of the movie that he was just about to shoot. It was a movie called Rollover, and the two stars were Chris Christopherson and Jane Fonda. Now, I am a Vietnam veteran, and the play was about Vietnam. So if Alan had mentioned to her that that's where he found me at this play about Vietnam, I'm sure she started thinking, oh God, is this Hanoi Jane? Is that gonna rise up? So we'd only done one scene together, and I got home after we wrapped, and there was a phone message, and she said, Robert, this is Jane. My husband and children are going to see, it was something on Broadway. I don't remember what show it was. But we're having dinner at a restaurant near the theater. And I was wondering if you could join us, And it was a wonderful steakhouse that I had never been in before. Mm-hmm. And I was very kind of blown away because we had not spent much time together in the one scene that we did shoot. And so it was her son and daughter were there, and her former husband, and they were kind of doing their own thing and, getting ready to see the theater and chatting themselves. And at some point, we were talking about vulnerabilities and all that, and she brought up the Vietnam thing. She said, there's some things I did in my younger life that I regret, and they were done with the best of intentions, but they were foolish for someone to do. Even though, so I understood that she was talking about her protest. She didn't know that I was anti-war before I got drafted, and even more so when I got back from Vietnam.
Sure.
I was very anti-war, so I was more on her side to begin with. But we talked about all that, and as had a wonderful meal. And after I left, I thought, she has just rehearsed telling Vietnam veterans that she was sorry about sitting on the gun and mimicking shooting planes down, all that. And sure enough, a year later, she made her public statement for the first time, admitting in a way that this was not a cool thing to do. So I felt very blessed to have been the recipient of that. And of course, I was in no place to forgive her, but I certainly was reassured that this was a wonderful woman, a very bright woman, and she had shown me a bit of humility, especially doing this to a Vietnam veteran. So it was very, yeah. But the other person that I had a great time with was Jim Carrey. I did one of the
Ace Ventura.
You did. Yeah. You sure did.
And something we talked about spilled into the movie. If you ever watch it, we were talking on the chairs, waiting for the setup of the scene, a scene that I wasn't in, but I was waiting for a scene that I would be in. So we were talking, and I was so impressed by how bright and well-read he was. The goofy stuff and the funny stuff was so obvious, but like Robin Williams, to see that other side. And I worked with Robin too, and we had the same kind of interaction. And he and his wife Marcia took me out to dinner, and he wanted to discuss Vietnam too. So it was interesting for me to talk to both of them. These things keep popping up. I just finished writing a memoir, and a lot of these stories are like bumping up against one another. But anyway, here, the thing I wanted to tell you about Carrie is we were talking about that, and also about Shawshank Redemption, which he felt very strongly about, thought was a wonderful movie and all that. Mm-hmm. So then he said they called him to the set, and it was in this cave, and the natives were worshiping this entity called I don't remember.
Shikaka.
That's right.
I'm a big fan of that
movie. Around with Kaka a lot when we were talking about that. So he gets in there and he notices that anytime anybody says Shikaka, they drop to their knees. And they get up again and he says, Shikaka. Boom, they're down on their knees again. Then he starts playing Mother May I. He goes, Shia poopy. And they don't know what. And his final word was Shawshank Redemption. And again, they pull back, but the shh at the beginning had them going on their knees. And that came strictly out of the fact that that's what we had been talking about, 15 minutes earlier. And I couldn't believe it when I saw the movie that he had put in that little plug for another film. But he was fun, and Robin was spectacular. And I've just enjoyed all of these folks I worked for. And I find, people used to talk about film versus theater and all that. I found that there was far more kind of people on edge and kind of maneuvering among a cast. I had experienced that more in theater than I ever did in the movies. Now, I didn't have, except for Shawshank, what anyone would call a major role in a lot of these movies. So maybe at that level, there's more of the ill-disguised conflict. But from where I was working on most of these films, it was just everybody's happy to be there. And in most cases, the director was competent and sometimes even better than that. And I just had fun doing it. Oh.
So it's so amazing. I mean, you are, let's talk about Ace Ventura first, just real quickly. That's one of the most quotable quotable movies of all time. And I've been obsessed with that movie since like 95, whenever it came out. So much better than the first one. But one of the movies that I have been just a massive fan of since the first time I saw it, when I was probably much too young to see it, but that's another story, is Demolition Man. I've had 3 seashells that I painted silver on the back of my toilet for a decade. And
he's not kidding. I've seen them.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And I love the movie so much, and I don't know exactly what it is about it, but it's such a great film. And I just was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about your experience working with Sly and Sandra Bullock on that.
Sylvester was, for the most part, terrific. I was a little amused by the fact that when in between shooting scenes, he would go back in the studio and hit golf balls into a net. And he actually had somebody standing there to put the golf ball on the tee before he whacked it. And as it turned out, at some point, he pulled his arm, that muscle. And I think we had a day or two where we had to, not shoot. And of course, he was in most of the scenes. He was terrific. Sandy was the best. They had originally cast someone else. And while we were in a week of rehearsal, it became clear that this person did not fill the bill. So when Sandra Bullock was brought on board, all of us fell in love with her. She had just the right tone of humor and passion and attractiveness that the kind of frisson between Stallone's character and her really worked. There was something going on. And some of my favorite moments was actually with Rob Schneider. I played this kind of wimpy chief of police, which is going with the whole fact that civilization has gotten too soft, and so you need to bring somebody like Stallone's character back to face Wesley Snipes' character, because the rest of us are too squeamish about blood and everything else. So Rob Schneider and I and Benjamin Bratt in character are watching a video of what Stallone and Wesley Snipes characters are up to, and there's suddenly a huge explosion or something really violent going on, and Rob Schneider just goes and goes under the camera, and I just did this little beat, and I looked down at my shoes.
Yeah.
The notion being that he had vomited on my boots. But he was fun. And then there was a British actor, Nigel. Hawthorne, not Joe Hawthorne. And he, like me, had most of our career in theater. And we actually spent a little time kind of, surveying these people doing this film with a lot of guns and things in it. And so that was enjoyable for me too. It was a little snarky, but it's a funny movie as well as action and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of our fun. Playing this over theater is much more important deal.
Did you? I don't know if this is something that you're interested in, but I can see in the background like an Avita poster and your 24 thing. Did you keep anything from Demolition Man?
Let me see. Well, I did take one thing away from Demolition Man that proved to be very important when I did Shawshank, which I did exactly after doing Demolition Man. The producer of Demolition Man wanted me to look like the actor that was in Sunset Boulevard, the German actor. Can't remember his name. Famous actor director, Eric von Stroheim. Takes me a little while, but it shows up. He wanted me to look like that. And so while he sat next to me in a makeup chair, he had hair and makeup shave all of the hair off my head, which I had never done before for anybody or any movie. But they were paying me a lot of money. I thought, no. And this was before I knew I was going to be doing Shawshank. And actually, when I auditioned, did a screen test, they built a wig for me just for the screen test. A wonderful, very expensive wig. And I flew to New York to read scenes on camera with Tim Robbins. And so by the time they let me know that I was going to be doing it, I was already bald. And so when I got to Mansfield to begin rehearsing and then filming, they bought another wig, an even better one, specifically designed. And it's the first thing you see of him, this kind of Presbyterian minister comb over thing. And so, as you may know, we shot in chronological order in that movie, mostly for technical reasons. So the stippling and all of the aging stuff, we wouldn't have to go bounce back and forth from doing that. Once we got to the 60s, late 50s and 60s, then from then on, we went right in and put the stipple and the shading and all of the and the hair graying and all that business. So by the time we were ready to do that, my hair had grown out somewhat. And this was the 60s. And I looked in the mirror and what I saw was Bull Connor, the guy down in Alabama who had fought very hard against integration and had been involved in some actual violence against them, kind of a nemesis. And I thought, wow, this looks right for some reason. And as I thought about it, I thought, most wardens do not spend 20 years in the same prison. They get moved around, or they get moved up to some other managerial position, or they get out and do something else. But in this case, Warden Norton has been there for 20 years. And my thought was that in the same way that prison turns people into hardened, damaged people, more damaged than when they came in, my theory was that it would for a warden too, to be around that soul-sucking environment, particularly that
Mm.
prison, because it was like a terrible 15th century hole for like the Inquisition or something. So I went to Frank and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, it's perfect. And so the second half of the movie, I have a completely different hair thing. I changed the glasses from these sweet little, again, ministerial wireless rimmed glasses to this clunky, dark, ear things, and to me, it said that this guy who was pretty corrupt for the first 18 years of his association with Andy and with the prison itself, this is what he looks like after all that time. And, it worked out great. I was very happy, and I owed it solely to Demolition Man. And when I had my head shaved, I remember going back to show it to my wife, and our cat, Rosie the cat, walked into the room as I walked indoors, and she took a look at me and she jumped back. Honest to God, she was petrified. And I think I don't have the head for a permanent bald thing, so I'm happy I've retained a good amount of this for my age. That's my Demolition story.
I had no clue. I just rewatched Shawshank the other day because I was excited to meet with you today. I never would have guessed you were wearing a wig, at least in the first half of that film. And so I love that story. The other thing I love about Shawshank is you and I have something else in common. I read that you were on your way at first to become a priest. Mm-hmm. I'm a pastor.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. And so, I've always tried to figure out how on a Sunday morning I can use the line, put your trust in the Lord, but your ass belongs to me.
You might want to rethink that for a while. There's actually, I at conventions, I usually ask people if they want a quote from the movie or something. I ask their permission first before I put this on a photo that they'd be keeping, whether they mind the word ass on this photo. And they say, no, I love that line.
It's so good. It's so good. I love that film. It's a classic to me. It's like an all-time top favorite film of mine, and I absolutely adore it. The last question I was going to ask, you had talked very much about your time in Vietnam, and thank you for your service. But I came across this story that I just thought was fascinating about you being reunited with one of your dog tags. Do you mind sharing how that came about and kind of talking through that?
Yeah, when as grunts in Vietnam, meaning troops who walked through the jungle and jumped off helicopters, combat assaulted, basically we're in the field, in the jungle for like 30 days, and then come back to the rear area for showers and hot food and maybe a change of fatigues, and then you go out again. So because of, I don't know if they did this in World War II or Korea, but everyone had been issued 2 dog tags and put it on a chain. And in normal life in a secure area, it wouldn't matter that there's this little clinking. But out in the jungle, no way. Some guys had a rubber strip around both of them so that it was never metal to metal. But most of us kept one on the lavalier on the chain, and the other one we laced into our jungle boots. And the reason for that is in case we were to be you know, killed or really, I don't know how to quite put this, where you'd have trouble identifying who this
Sure.
person had been, who this corpse was, that if the foot was still intact, you would have all the information you need right there. So it's pretty gruesome to think about, but that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, I lost track of the one that I had in my boot. And obviously, I had changed shoes and boots, and I had gone off to R&R in Australia, and I came back, and I didn't wear the combat boots there. So somehow I lost that that dog tag. It was maybe even in a combat assault. I know I lost a wallet scrambling out of a helicopter. We were under siege, under fire. So it might have been then, I don't know. Anyway, cut to 45 years later, maybe more. This woman in Philadelphia heard about this story where someone had visited Vietnam long after the war, and in Da Nang had come across somebody who had this huge container of American soldier dog tags. And certainly many are probably from corpses or from deceased or from wounded who, you know, for one reason or another were separated from the dog tag. And so I got a call through my agent that this woman wanted to talk to me about Vietnam. I didn't recognize her name. I just thought, sometimes I get calls from people, coming over eager fans or something. It's sometimes it can be kind of creepy. That's why I always have these things set up through my agent. But I took her call, and she said, "Did you by any chance lose a dog tag when you were in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, somebody has found it, and I have it here, and I'd like to present it to you. We are an American Legion." She's part of the American Legion in just outside Philadelphia. And she's been doing this for years off of this one discovery of this cache of dog tags, which the fellow who saw them first brought them back, didn't know how to even go about finding the owners. And she took on that responsibility, doing tremendous research on the web and other sources and with the Army and Marine Corps, and was finding people one by one, and mine had come up. So it happens I was in New York doing a guest star thing, and I did have a day where I could shoot over to Philadelphia to pick this up, because it spooked me originally, but then I thought, God, what a metaphor of making it through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went by train to Philadelphia, and I was met by this about 10 or 15 contingent of motorcycle veterans. And sure enough, they included some peace officers too. And they were in their full regalia, and including mementos from Vietnam. Many of them were Vietnam veterans. So they were geezers like me, but they're on motorcycles. So they put me in this very nice 4x4, and they took the lead, all these motorcycle mavens. And I was followed by, no, I wasn't followed. The whole thing was led by a couple of police cars with their sirens on. And we actually paraded through from Philadelphia to this place in New Jersey where the American Legion Hall actually existed. And there, amid a little picnic lunch and lots of meetings with other veterans, in a little plastic case, I was presented with the dog tag, which looked like it had been through hell.
Mm.
I mean, it was bent, and it was also, there was some fire damage to it. I mean, they don't burn up, but they get kind of smoky. And I had my other one with me, and it's like two different worlds represented here. And I was very moved by it. I didn't think I thought it was going to be kind of, well, this is kind of a funny deal. But I became very emotional as I accepted it and saw all of these people out there honoring another veteran. I didn't go into great detail about how I felt about the Vietnam War, but I did very easily say that some of the finest men I'd ever met were over there, and most of them were very young. I was 23 or 24 when I got drafted, and most of these were kids, some of whom had a choice of either going to jail for something or enlisting, and others just got drafted. And so I didn't go into my political beliefs, that kind of thing, but I was very moved to be considered a part of this group.
Sure.
And so my dog tags have been reunited. I don't wear them anymore, but they are together. Together
That's such
again.
an amazing story, and I love that. I love that they made it their way back to you. Like you said, it's a interesting full circle. And not only are you a hero in movies and films and productions, we love you're a hero in real life. And we are just so grateful for your time. So thankful that you're willing to sign for our group. And man, I really just loved this last hour together. So thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Time flies.
I do carry on, don't I? I thought this would be like a 15-minute thing, and not because of you, but because of me. Yes, it's been over an hour. Matt, great meeting you, even Zooming here, although we're all getting used to that.
Yep.
Even meeting with directors, used to have to go in a room and speak to them about a film that they were interested in you for. Now it's just, well, here I am, office. What do you want? Kind of neat. But I enjoyed talking with you. And as I said, I usually run over in these things, but I hope there's something in here useful.
Oh, yeah.
This is amazing. This is we've been looking forward to speaking with you since we started talking to Scott, and your stories are incredible. I honestly cannot wait to read your memoir. You know, when that comes out, we're going to be first in line.